Hello and welcome to Queers and Soaps. I'm Eric, joined once again by
Tim, hi.
bringing you some more Desperate Housewives, season one, episodes 7 to 9. Tommy will roll the credits and we'll chat. These were some fun episodes. I like them. I forgot all of this stuff. I thought a lot of things happen later. Um, it's crazy how fast things are hopping here in season one. Um, so it starts out with Bree. So
Okay.
you got the
So
floor.
this episode is anything you can do. Basically, they talk about keeping up with the Joneses on Wisteria Lane. And by keeping up with the Joneses, you're keeping up with Bree Vandekamp. Even Mrs. Huber, and I said the name right this time, tries to compete with Bree. They talk about Bree's lawn. Mrs. Huber tries her best. Nothing she can do compares to Bree's lawn. Her gardens, her hydrangeas, until a neighbor is jogging and collapses on Mrs. Hoover's lawn. Mrs. Hoover runs in really quick to go call 911. And then she thinks, no, this can't happen on my lawn. She wheels the guy over to Bree's lawn and throws him in her prize winning hydrangeas. And Bree
Hmm.
comes out, calls for help, and looks devastated. And that's how the scene starts out in this episode.
Yeah.
And then I think it's Mary Alice. All the friends are joined together with Mary Alice. We're talking about Mary Alice and the book club. Mary Alice kind of held everything together. When Mary Alice died, the book club fell apart, and the girls just can't seem to keep interested. They're preoccupied with their own lives. There's that sense of community isn't there.
They're
And
basically using the book club to drink.
yes, so they use the book club to drink, and eventually, I think what happens is the one book club, they want to talk about what happened. So Bree distracts people and gets them in the kitchen. So all the girls, the basic girls, Gabby, Lynette, Susan, and Bree can all talk, and they
Hmm.
talk about the suicide note, and they bring up the whole idea of Dana on the blanket.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's it for that scene, right?
Yeah. But you want to tell Bree's story. So what else did Bree do throughout these
Okay,
episodes?
so skipping
Like
ahead,
they
uh,
met up with the Reverend, right?
well, that's later, I think. The
Oh
Reverend,
no, Rex.
actually the school. They meet up at the school.
Yeah, Rex and Bree.
Bree and Rex meet up at school, and they're talking about their son. Their son gets in trouble. Andrew gets in trouble for roughhousing. Um, they talk about a possible suspension, and Rex tries to tell the principal or disciplinarian, "Hey, please give our son a break. We're going through a really nasty separation." And then
Hmm.
he throws it at Bree that it's going to be divorce. I have the best lawyer, and they're serving you today after this. Bree is
Hmm.
shocked that he brings this up in front of someone in public.
Yeah.
And basically, the principal goes and tries to back down and say, maybe just a detention will do for Andrew. And again, it's all from Andrew acting out and roughhousing with someone.
Rex is so full of anger. Like it's crazy. Like that Bree would cause that much anger in this person.
I mean, I
So
guess
I
it
know
is. I
he.
guess when someone is that controlling and controls your life and you have enough of it, it's almost like the idea of you're poking a bear. Eventually, the bear is going to snap. And
Yeah, like he
not
just
that
hates her.
Rex isn't violent or anything, but he's just had enough of Bree's perfect world and everything being ideal, you know?
Yeah.
So I continue with Bree's story, right? The whole time?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So let's see. Okay, we find Bree and Paul around a dinner table. Um, I'm sorry, Bree and Rex around the dinner table. They talk
Yeah.
about the kids are telling them they're getting divorced. Andrew right away asks, "Can I live with Dad?" And Bree is taken aback, and basically he says, "Mom, we drive each other crazy. They're like oil and water; they don't mix." So Bree turns to Danielle and says, "Danielle, what would you prefer?" Danielle doesn't care as long as she gets her own bathroom. And Bree and Rex kind of
Yeah.
argue a little bit back and forth with that. And I think that's the end of that scene. And then we go to, let's see, Rex shows up at the house and gives Andrew a gift, and he buys Andrew a car. And then he hands Danielle a very expensive piece of luggage. I think it looked like Louis Vuitton, maybe it was Coach, Gucci, I don't know. But it looked like a expensive piece of luggage, and he tells her that he's paying for her modeling career. That in an earlier scene, Gabby suggests that she would give a recommendation and help to sponsor Danielle at a modeling school in New York.
Mm-hmm.
That part of the story later, but basically causes friction between Rex and Bree because she feels he's trying to buy their love, and
Which he kind of is.
argue back and forth. There basically it's a fight to keep the gifts. Danielle sort of gives in a little bit, but Andrew, I think Andrew leaves, and this is when Gabby. This is when no, they sort of bring up about Gabby sticking her nose in the business about the modeling school. And I think it ends there. I think Andrew ends up driving, Danielle stays. Then you forward to another scene, and Andrew drove off in his expensive new sports car. You open Bree's house, and all these clothes are on the lawn. And first you think, is this like a yard sale, garage sale? No, Bree's kicking her kids out, and she has everything divided down the pathway to the house, and all of Andrew's stuff is on one side, all of Danielle's stuff is on the other, and it's categorized into school books, mementos, clothes, and random belongings in sections of the lawn. That shows how controlling and how OCD Bree really is.
Yeah, right.
And this is where Andrew leaves in his car.
Even when she does something messy, she makes it nice.
Yeah, right. Danielle sort of gives in there. And next,
Is that finished recently?
He leaves, I think, and then Andrew says he's going to go live with Dad or whatever. He leaves, he fights. He says, I'm going to go live with Dad. Rex and Andrew fight at Rex's apartment, and he says, look, your mother and I are going through a lot of stuff right now, and I need time on myself. I have to focus on myself. In some ways, this is where I think Rex is a little selfish, because the divorce just doesn't affect him and Bree, it affects their kids.
Right.
So basically, Rex says, I need this time alone to focus on me. Basically saying, Andrew, you can't stay. You have to go back to your mother. So Andrew leaves. He calls one of his friends. I think they said his friend's name is Keith. And he says, you still have that fake ID. I need to go kiss my mom's ass, so to speak. And basically, they're going to go to a bar. He says, I can't do it sober.
He needs alcohol, yes.
Yeah, and drama ensues very soon. So you fast forward to a scene where Andrew is drunk driving. I don't know if I should give that part away yet, because that's part of the Celeste story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right. So I'm gonna be Lynette. Lynette is still popping pills. Tom tells her he wants to do a formal dinner, and he says something along the lines of like, Bree always does it, and it like snaps her a little bit, like, really? Like you're comparing me to her? But like she's like, oh no, that's fine. We'll do it. We'll get it done. And she goes to get more pills, and she's basically run out. So she needs to find some other pills. She goes to Jordana for more pills. Jordana's like, yeah, I need them myself, so I can't spare any. Um, in the meantime, Susan and Lynette find the baby blanket with the Dana on it, which I think Susan has from the um, what's it what's it called? Flea market that they had, whatever. Um, Lynette makes a play date with another lady, that she knows like their kids. I think their son is on, what is it, Adderall?
Adderall. So it's an ADD,
Thank you.
ADHD medication.
Yeah, I can never remember. I'm always like Ativan. No. Um, so yeah, the son's on the meds or whatever. So she goes to their bathroom, and she's like, she knows she's not doing the right thing, but she takes one or whatever, and then they say that she's vowing never to do sink solo again, but then she takes like a handful of drugs. Um, so at the advertising meeting, that Lynette is hosting, It's at the dinner party. Tom's making his pitch. The people aren't that into it, and she's high as a kite, so she's like giving her ideas, and they're loving her ideas. And they agree with her more than Tom's ideas, so she kind of won the night. Tom goes off on Lynette. They fight about competing. They always have to compete against each other. She feels like she always has to compete against everyone, the neighbors and whatnot. Tom kind of compliments her. He's like, you're a great mother. Um, and then he notices her eyes and like I guess they're bloodshot, so he notices something's wrong. And that's all I can tell about that because it leads to the very shocking ending. So you can do Susan.
Okay, so Susan, let me pick up where Susan is in the story. Susan's with the girls at that discussion earlier at the book club. Susan and Julie, they flash to a scene with Susan and Julie. Susan is going on a date with Mike. Julie jokingly says, Mike better not bring you home late. Julie's the daughter, and she's always more like the mother to her mother. She's the one that keeps it together. Susan acts like a teenager, never gets anything right, fumbles and everything. Basically, Julie brings up the subject of protection, condoms, but doesn't say condoms. And she says, again, I want to be the only daughter. And again, she's acting like the mother here. Fast forward to...
This is when Susan's heading over Mike's house, right? And
yes.
bumps into Edie.
She bumps into Edie. And Susan looks...
That wasn't even cool.
The dress looks a little dated now, but for that time, that dress was very hot.
2004.
So, yeah. He's putting the for sale sign on Paul's house when she's walking out. A little context. And she's going across the street to Mike's house. They talk back and forth. Edie gives her some attitude. He sort of compliments her, but it's a backhanded compliment. But right before she's going over, someone shows up at Mike's house, and it's an unexpected person. It's a woman, a girl. You have no idea who she is. Her name is Kendra. She just walks in. She says she's going to be staying a little while. Mike enters the door when Susan comes to the door, and Mike says, Susan, I am so sorry. We're going to have to cancel the date. She's like, I don't understand what happened. And he said, I have an out-of-town guest. Just then, Kendra comes behind, sort of introduces herself, and Kendra says she's going to take a shower. Susan looks shocked, like, what the hell? There's another woman at the house. It's not me. It's not Edie. and Mike promises to make it up to her. And generally, at this point, you don't know a lot about Mike. Little hints here and there, sort of shady, but you like him. So you're like, well, what's going on with this girl? Susan has to walk back past Edie, and she's trying to hide her face, with her purse. And Edie sort of points out what happened with the date, and she said, well, Mike had to cancel. And that's that. Susan does the walk of shame home, and no adult conversations happen, so to speak. She didn't need protection at this point.
Well, that was also after Susan kind of rubbed it in her face that they kissed.
Yeah, she did say they kissed, yeah.
We kissed, by the way, FYI. And so when she's walking back, Edie's like, oh, I saw that hot girl over there, FYI. Made it look like worse for Susan.
Crazy.
Poor thing.
I know, right? So you go to the next
Although Susan shouldn't have done that, because every time you rub something in somebody's face, it usually does come back to get you in the ass.
It does, because right away we're all human. We all react. Either you respond or you react. And most of us, try to respond. It's the better thing to do. Where you react, we wait for the right moment to throw something in someone's face or to get somebody.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what, Susan's human. She, you hope she responds, but sometimes she reacts. So you go to another scene with Kendra and Mike. And Kendra, I guess, gets out of the shower, whatever she did, but she's still at Mike's house. And she says to him, is this all you have? And then we realize Kendra isn't there as an interest. Kendra, we find out, is hired by the gentleman in the previous episode, who is trying to find out what happened to, they really don't say, but we know it's Dana at this point. Dana went missing. There's something with Dana in the box. We don't quite understand. He's looking to find out what happened to her. Kendra is there and says, this is all you have. What happens? And she basically asks Mike, what happens when Susan finds out that you're not the nice handyman that everyone thinks you are?
Right.
She's going to eventually find out, Mike. And Mike is like, I don't want to hurt her, basically. And that scene goes on from there. So we go back to Susan is Lynette and Susan talk, and this is back to the dinner. Lynette tries to borrow a catering dish off of Susan for the big party that she's having with Tom and the business dinner or whatever. And that's when they notice that blanket. There's a blanket in the garage, and Lynette says something about, oh, isn't this nice? Or Susan says, isn't this nice? Look at the embroidery. And she said, oh, I got this from the flea market. And that's where you see the name Dana comes up again. That's another scene with Susan and Lynette. Then we go forward to... Okay, there's the open house at at Paul's, that Edie's hosting, because Paul's putting his house up for sale. And Mike and Kendall walk in to see the house. Susan asks why they're there, or no, Edie ends up asking Susan why she's there, because Edie's doing the open house and Susan walks in. Susan says she wants to say goodbye to Mary Alice. It's one last time before the house gets sold that she'll be able to see the inside of it, because Paul is acting cold to all the neighbors.
Yeah.
Edie says, are you sure you're here for that? Are you really here because Mike and his girlfriend are here? She sort of throws it in her face that she could possibly be a girlfriend. Edie overhears that they're going to a bar called, I forget if it's Saddle Bar or Saddle something, for drinks and dinner.
Country Western bar, yeah.
Yeah, it's a country Western bar. So she sort of throws it in Susan's face, but she misheard it. They're going because that's the last place that Kendall's sister was spotted. So they sort of hint now that Dana may not be a child. She may be an adult. You're still not sure. They don't really reveal what she is at this point. But it's the last place that Kendall's sister was spotted.
Kendra.
I say Kendall. Kendra. So Edie basically says, why don't we go? I'll go with you. And you go to Edie and Susan. They show Edie and Susan having drinks at the bar. And they're there. Susan gets ready to leave, and they just spot Mike and Kendra. And basically, Susan's trying to hide from Mike. She tries to leave and everything. Edie, they open to another scene. Edie's on this mechanical bull, crazy, shirts tied up, breasts sort of on display. And she looks like she's having a good time. Susan tries to leave. Mike catches her. And she says, no, Edie and I come here all the time. She's like, really? Because it looks like you're trying to hide from her. And she said, Edie told me you were here. And then she says, oh, I'm here because we like to ride the mechanical bull. And Mike's like, really? I haven't seen the mechanical bull. And Susan says, yeah, I like to ride it. I'm going to ride it. So she throws her purse at Mike and Kendra. And she starts to tie up her shirt like Edie has, exposing her midriff. And she's sort of flirting with the guy. She throws something at him. I forget what she throws at him. He falls in the mechanical bull's mechanism that starts it, the start switch, and it hits Susan in the head. So you open the next scene.
She doesn't even make it on the bull.
Yeah, she never even gets on the bull. So you open up to, I think it's Mike and Kendra kind of helping Susan. And they're helping Susan. Make sure I'm trying to find out where I am now. Basically, they try to help her. And that's where Kendra kind of comes clean and says, look, we're just friends. There's nothing between Mike and I. Mike excuses himself. I forget if he goes to the bathroom, goes to the bar. But Kendra says to Susan, you better be careful with Mike. Make sure you know him before you really get serious with him. Because Kendra knows that he's there to spy on the community. That's the real reason he's there. We've already seen money in cabinets and different things and information in cabinets. But this is where she hints to Susan that, hey, you really need to get to know Mike before anything serious happens.
And she seems a little concerned, that Susan. She's like, why would she say that?
Yeah. You kind of see the puzzle look in her face, but she really likes Mike, but she's not ready to give up on him yet. Fast forward to a scene where Mike and Susan are together, or Susan knocks at Mike's house, and Mike basically has a phone call that comes through. They're going to go wine tasting at 6, but Mike has a phone call that comes through, and I guess goods are being delivered, like lumber or something, to his house, and he won't be able to be there. And Susan says, Mike, why don't you just give me a key? I'll let the guy in, and then I'll lock up and leave. So fast forward to Susan at the house with the key. The guy's dropping off lumber, and she goes, I think, to go give the dog a biscuit or something. but she notices money inside a cabinet, a lot of money. Oh, she
Hmm.
notices this earlier in the scene, but she sees money inside a cabinet and a gun. She goes when the guy leaves and drops off the lumber. She counts all the money, but she has it all on the coffee table. And the gun she pulls out on the coffee table. And then the guy rings the
Is this
doorbell
the
again.
same episode?
This is
I
the
think
same
that's
episode.
it is really. I don't remember
Maybe
that
it's not. Maybe I'm
happening.
fast forwarding.
Yeah, I think you're in the next
I'm fast
episode.
forwarding. Yeah, I know,
Yeah, so
right?
I think it kind of ended, I think, with the country western stuff for them,
Oh, you're right. It did. It did.
I
Oh,
believe.
yeah, it did.
So Gabby's story in this one. Gabby wants to meet John, of course, still continuing her affair with the young high school man. He has a date with Danielle. Juanita calls John from her Gabby's phone after the fact and sees that, yeah, it's definitely John. She kind of suspected and assumed it was, but she never officially knew until now. Gabby tells Danielle that she'll help her get into New York, whatever, as I guess they're going to be graduating, um, which is what you said about the Bree and Rex stuff. Their stories kind of intertwine with that. Bree confronts Gabby about sponsoring Danielle. John hears it and gets upset. Um, and she says, okay, we'll end it. We'll have a proper goodbye, whatever. So they're planning on not seeing each other anymore. Well, he is, and he thinks that, but Gabby's actually probably planning on still hooking him because she's a dirty old woman, even though she's in her young 20s or whatever. But, he's only what, 17, I think.
Yeah.
And Juanita overhears that. So that's not looking good. Gabby fakes cramps to meet with John, and she's about to go out to dinner with Carlos and Juanita, so they end up going out. Gabby and John stay at her place and have sex there. Juanita takes a cab home because she knows she's going to bust them. She does. She takes a picture of them. Actually, I think she doesn't. She say like smile or something, and like takes their picture.
Yeah. She says, "Smile,
Um,
Gabby," or
so
"Smile, Gabby."
they're totally in the sex, and yep, now there's a picture of it out there. Um, Gabby's like, it's over, and just starts packing. John goes and like kind of not like attacks Juanita, but is like, you can't have, I need the camera back. I need the camera back. She like basically kicks his ass. Juanita like floors them basically, and then basically she's running out the door, and I forget if I guess she's trying to catch the cab because the cab was waiting for her.
The cab was waiting across the
And
street, I think.
yeah, so when she runs across the street, she gets mowed down by we don't know who at this point. Um, and then so Gabby goes outside. Everybody, I think John's out there. I don't remember where John is actually, but
She
Gabby ends
told
up
John to leave, I think. Or no, she didn't tell John to
okay.
leave.
Yeah,
He's still inside the house.
yeah. No, no. She did tell him to leave because she's like, pretend you were never here. And then she handles the situation. She takes the camera off of her. Um,
I think it was a phone. It was a camera phone. It was a flip camera phone. I want to say.
was it?
I think it was a flip phone.
No, I think it was a full blown like old school. I
Maybe
used
it
to use
was.
the little cameras. Yeah, like it looked like one you have to still like she probably would have had to get it developed. But I'm not sure now that you said that. Yeah, I don't know if there was those phones in 2000. I don't remember. Anyway, it was a camera. She got it. So now it's whatever. I don't know if she destroys it or hides it because they never show it again, as far as now. And that's it for Gabby's. And then I think we covered everything. So the little in-between stuff we have, which is important, um, is Edie meets with Paul at one point. I think she's trying to sell his house. And she leaves like a book there, or like some kind of book with like paper in it that it's the same paper that was used for the Mary Alice note. Um, Paul meets with a hitman because he thinks that Edie's the one that did it, that wrote the note, and he's like, "You're the reason my whole life is in upheaval," basically, and wants to get revenge. This hitman, by the way, is Richard. Roundtree, who was Shaft in the 1970s. I don't know if you ever heard of that show. But he just actually died last year, and his
Oh,
last movie was just out this summer called Thelma, which was a great movie. You would love it. Go see it. Um, he was also in Beverly Hills 90210, As the World Turns from 2002 to 2003, and Generations. So he got around this Richard Roundtree. Rest in peace. Um, so yeah, so $5,000 he's saying to hurt Edie, or 10 grand, and she's gone. Doesn't say he's gonna kill her. She's just gone. But she's gonna be dead, basically. And that's all the Paul stuff that happens with this, and it ends with everybody's outside with Juanita, um, and like the ambulance comes, and you can take over as the end is Breeze.
oh, Breeze. So, what do they show with Bree? Bree,
You see Andrew gets home in the
Bree
car, and
gets
you
home, and
see,
Andrew is in the kitchen, and
hmm
she says something to him, and he goes, "Mama." Basically, he needs her help, and she realizes something's wrong. And I forget if this is where he confesses what he did, or she knows what he did.
no, it's at the very end of the episode, so
Yeah,
she kind of figures it out,
yeah.
and then I think she calls Rex,
She
and
calls
she's
Rex
like,
immediately. She
"You
says, "I
need to
need you to
come
come
here."
home."
Yeah. That's it on that one. The next episode is episode 8 called Guilty. Um, the ladies are cleaning up the street. Juanita, we find out, is in a coma. Gabby and Carlos sit by Juanita. John comes by to like, I guess, wish her like well, and he feels bad and stuff. And Carlos is going to go to a chapel, and Gabby and John asked to go with him to the chapel, where Gabby kind of stayed behind. She's like, "Oh, I thought we were gonna like talk." Or probably with Gabby, she probably would have made out with him, with Juanita right in that coma, because she's that disturbed at this point. Um, Bree and the family visit Carlos and Gabby because they're trying to see how Juanita is. If she dies, that means their son's basically a murderer. Not murderer, but what is it called when accidental death, I guess.
Manslaughter? I
Um,
don't know.
yeah, I think manslaughter that would probably be right because he didn't plan on it. Um, so they give a Juanita update. She's just in a coma. Um, Carlos said something like, "Oh, something about the kids because it's so nice to have kids and stuff." And he wants to start a family. Gabby's like, "Oh, that's the first I heard of it." And she's like, "No, we ain't having kids." And then they kind of start fighting in front of them. Bree's like, "We should leave." Getting a little uncomfortable. Gabby goes to talk to John. He says they are finished. He wants it to end. He says that he confessed everything to a Father Crowley, his priest, and he told everything, every sort of detail, even like sex things apparently, which is crazy. But this guy's only a kid, and she's a dirty old lady, really. I mean, she's 24, but still gross. Gabby has that priest come to Juanita's because she wants to find out if her secrets are safe, basically, covering her ass. She asks about the secrets. He says, "You can talk to me if you want, Um, if you need to like confess things, I'm here." And he's giving her like dirty looks. She's like, "Stop looking at me like that. Stop it." And I did make note that she's reading a soap opera weekly because she was in Young and the Restless. So I just thought that was kind of fun. And literally, I think she got fired off Young and the Restless and got this job like right after that. And he says, as long as you're like very sorry for your sins, like, it might work out for you. She's like, what if I'm like really sorry, like when I'm 75? He's basically like, what if you die tomorrow? Like, so like you should like repent now. Um, and then it ends with like her giving Juanita a sponge bath or whatever because like she's trying to be better, I guess, in a way. I don't know. Right now, Gabby is kind of not a good person.
She seems selfish. I think even the priest compares her when he says she talks about forgiveness and everything else in the sin and, confessing, being remorseful. And she says about, well, what if I would confess tomorrow? And she said, I want to be happy. And he said, that doesn't sound like an adult. He compares her to a child. She's
Yeah,
acting like a child. She's not fully
she is.
mature. And it is. She has everything she wants. She's beautiful. You know,
Right. And which makes sense because she's like kissing on a 17-year-old, banging a 17-year-old boy.
she wants to have her
She's,
cake and eat it too. She wants the money with Carlos, but then she
mm,
wants the affection and connection with John, who again is,
right.
I think he's 17 and a half, they say. He's not quite 18.
Yeah, he's not.
Yeah, he's still in high school.
So I don't know which one's next, either Brie or Susan. What you got?
I'll start with Brie because actually the scene opens with Brie, and the scene actually
Yes, you're
opens
right.
with a Bible, right? So anyone that's Jewish or Christian, there's the Old Testament, New Testament, whatever, and there's this talk of sin and guilt, and they compare people's sins and everything, and they talk about Brie, and it really opens with Brie, and they talk about everything that Brie does in her life, and how she always feels guilt, but she's always looking for forgiveness and to be a better person, sort of perfect. And throughout the episode, there's that idea of sin in the Bible, and I know they talk about it several times, like again with the priests and Gabby and different people.
Yeah,
Um, you fast forward to um, Bree and Andrew. The family has a meeting, and they're basically trying to figure out Bree and Rex and the kids trying to figure out what to do because at this point they confessed that Andrew had ran Mrs. Solis down and left her in the street.
yeah.
So they talk about what to do with the car. They say, well, we can't report it because if something happens, he's going to go to jail. If she dies, he goes to jail. And again, he left the scene as a hit and run. It's serious. He's going to go to jail. So Bree
Yeah.
tries to think what to do, and she thinks, I'll deal with my guilt and remorse later. Right now, I have to protect my family. So she suggests leaving the car in a bad part of town. And she comes up. She's very quick with ideals. She finds the what she thinks is always the perfect answer for the situation at hand. So to make this idea, they're going to leave this. They're going to leave the car in a bad part of town with the car open and the keys in it. You go fast forward to Brex and Brex. I'm going to call them Brex. It's like a
Right.
combination of Bree and Rex. They're in
Yeah,
a bad part of town. They're talking and everything. She leaves the car there, puts down the sunroof, leaves the keys in it, and she goes in the car. And of course, she has a handkerchief over her head and a big kind of like raincoat. Typical. Looks like a 1950s housewife. She gets in the car with Rex, and they're talking about family and all these things. And the kids are growing up so fast. And she basically says, I still want to hold on to these memories, basically, we have, and I can't let them go. They talk about their kids, and the kids are growing up so fast, all that fun stuff. We fast forward to Bree and the family um, at the Solises, like you said, and they leave because of the argument. They all sort of look at each other, and they're like, wow, we have to go. This is awkward. Then
hmm
you see a scene where Bree is talking to Andrew, and she says, if you need to talk about anything, just let me know. But the scene opens with Bree in the garden and Andrew in a window above, and he notices his mother notice him. And he goes back in the window real quick. She goes up to talk to him and says, is there anything you want to talk about? And I think this is the scene where, no, it's not. I'm totally wrong. This is where she compares him to a monster because he has no remorse. He doesn't feel
hmm
guilt for what he's done. And again, there's that whole idea of sin, guilt, remorse, forgiveness.
Yeah, he's like, I got away with it, and just like,
Yeah.
it's cool.
And he
Let
said,
me
she's
take
an
my
old lady.
life.
She lived her life. I'm young. I haven't lived mine. And you hear
Hmm
this, and I'm like, oh my God, this guy has no soul. And I think she even mentions about she's worried about
He
his
does.
soul against that whole
Yep.
idea of remorse and forgiveness and all that stuff. Um,
And you can see
go
her
forward
wheels
to a
spinning. Like
scene
she
with
wants to punish him basically
she does, and she doesn't know what to
because
do.
yeah,
Um, go. I'm trying to think. I think that's the. I think Bree's in scenes with other people, but I think that's it for that.
is that it for that? Yeah, I think you're right. Oh yeah, you're right. So Lynette. Lynette, in the beginning, I thought this was funny when the ladies were cleaning up the street. Like, there's that car speeding down, and Lynette gets mad and like throws that with scrub brush at the car, and she whacks it too.
Yeah,
Like it was like um. So Lynette is getting acupuncture later. I guess she's trying to just get re rest and relax somehow. Her kids are wreaking havoc in the waiting room. She tells this lady that she's like, I need some kind of something to sleep. I need something to help me sleep because she's been wired from these drugs for the past however many days, weeks, whatever it's been. And the doctor like, or this lady, I don't know what she is. I guess she would be a doctor, right? They perform
But she's
acupuncture
like
too.
herbal medicine, I think. Like
Oh,
alternative
okay.
medicine is what they call it. She does acupuncture and she gives out like mushrooms and teas, like herbal remedies. She even says,
Yeah, so she gives,
I can't write you a prescription. I don't have
yeah,
that kind of
she gives her
license.
like an herbal tea to like help her sleep. Lynette drinks the tea. Then like the scout meeting people come up at the door, so she has to be like she's scout mom, of course, because Lynette's involved in everything. Because she likes to try to do it all, again, competing with everybody, other housewives. Um, and she's like teaching the boys how to make knots or trying to. I think, doesn't she like mess up the knot and it ends up being like a flat rope? And then she just goes upstairs and pops more pills. So. Now she's on downer tea and upper pills. So later on, the boys are wreaking havoc as Lynette's on the phone. She goes off, she starts breaking shit, throwing shit, peanut butter and all kinds of stuff. She sees Mary Alice through like her window, and Mary Alice kind of hands her the gun. And then she sees herself like blowing her brains out. And then she wakes up and snaps out of it. I guess it was like a daydream because again, she was on the downer and then the uppers, so she
That
passed
was
out basically.
that was a brutal scene to watch because like you feel
It
for
was.
Lynette, you
It
feel
was.
for her, and she's so frustrated that seems like in her dream the only way out. Mary Alice like is offering her, "Hey, take my way out," and you're like, "Thank God it was a
Yeah.
dream." But yeah, crazy.
Yeah, well, and then this leads to Lynette running to Susan's house, dropping the kids off, and just hightailing it to wherever. Bree and Susan. I guess Susan got Julie to watch the kids. I think. I think she
They
said
said
something about.
Danielle. It's Bree and
Oh, was
Susan
it
show up,
Danielle?
and
All
Susan
right.
says, "Do you think Danielle can handle the kids?" Or I hope Danielle can handle
Right.
the kids.
Um, Lynette tells the girls about her addiction and she feels like a failure. She cries. They both kind of tell stories about how they went through motherhood. And she's like, why didn't you tell me about this before? Like, this is important stuff. If I would have known, I might not have gone to these lengths. But everybody keeps everything secret. Bree's all secretive and everything's got to be perfect. So even if things were wrong, things wouldn't show through Bree. I feel like, again, Susan, I feel like I don't even know how she was a mother. I would have liked to have seen like some earlier years of her.
Yeah.
I wonder if Tom was like wait, what's her husband's name? I forget.
Carl, was it Carl?
Carl. Yeah, yeah.
We
I wonder if
we
like
still haven't met Carl
Carl.
yet, have we?
No, we have.
We
Yeah,
have.
he was
That's
in that
right.
one episode.
Yeah.
But I wonder if he was like more of a mother figure than she was.
Who knows? Yeah.
But Tom and Lynette are discussing higher. Oh, that's the next episode. So yeah, I think that's it for that.
I know, right?
And now we
So
got Susan.
Susan, right? So this is where
Yeah.
I jumped again a little bit with Susan. Susan's at Mike's house, and this is where they talk about going to a vineyard at 6 p.m., whatever. They can get a room last second because they might spend the night. And that's when Mike gets the phone call about lumber being delivered. And he says, I won't be here. Can we do another day? And that's where Susan says, hey, why don't you just give me the key and I'll let the guy in? And at this point, this is where Mike goes upstairs, agrees to it. She goes in the kitchen. She wants to give the dog a treat. And I forget the dog's name. I wrote it down somewhere. But anyway, she goes to give the dog a biscuit. She asks him where the biscuits are. He doesn't hear her. So she says, never mind. I'll find it myself. That's when she opens the cabinets and she sees all this money. She doesn't find the gun yet. Lots of money, wads of cash, like
Looks like
stacks,
thousands. Yeah.
thousands. Yeah, right. So you fast forward to um, Susan, Julie talking, talking about staying overnight with Mike. She feels like he's hiding something. um, they're not quite sure. The scene continues, and then Susan is at Mike's. She goes to the cabinet because she saw the money when the guy leaves, and she takes out all the money. They fast forward to a scene of her counting all the cash at a coffee table in front of the sofa, and the
Why
guns.
does she do that?
I don't know. I don't know. Susan, I feel like you
Has
said,
stupid
Susan, I
shit.
think never really matured. She's still that teenage girl that she probably had Jolie when she was a teenager, like maybe like 17, 18, 19. She just seems like she's caught. She doesn't make the
Yeah,
wisest decisions.
she takes the gun and counts the money. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah. She's curious. So there's a ring at the doorbell and she panics and it's the guy. He needs to actually have her sign something again. So she takes all the money and throws it in the bathroom
In the
sink
sink.
upstairs. She
I'm
goes
like,
to
what is this
leave to
girl
go really quick.
doing?
She leaves the bathroom to go sign the paper for the guy, and she falls through the floor. He talked about how bad the floor was in the second floor bathroom.
Yeah.
Need to redo it, and that's what the lumber was for. She falls through it. It reminds us of a scene out of The Money Pit. It was a great movie if you've
Yeah.
never seen The Money Pit, where half of her body's dangling through. She is trying to call the dog to help. The dog keeps leaving. She's like, here, grab the blanket, grab the towel. There's a towel. The dog leaves, and the dog goes to come back and drops a dead bird at her face as she's stuck on the floor and can't do anything. So she's sort of like dangling through. Again, it's the scene out of The Money Pit. She's waiting for the other half to come home. In this case, it's Mike. And
Yeah.
Mike, he goes in the house. He walks through Susan, and he sees her feet dangling. He goes upstairs, and she's like, Mike, thank God you're here. And he goes to help her out. He helps her out, I think. And then he turns his head and sees all the money in the sink with the gun.
And he
He
pissed.
says, Mike, I can explain. He goes, no, you need to leave.
Get out.
Yeah, and it's
Get
kind
out.
of one of those things. Susan is innocent, but it is a total invasion of privacy. We don't know why he has the money yet. We do know. No one else knows in Wisteria Lane. So you forward to other scenes. There's one scene of Susan drinking in her kitchen. Mike catches, I think she looks out the window, and Mike is looking across the street at her. And they just show them looking at each other. And then, so they fast forward to a scene of Mike comes knocking at the door. I think he sort of apologizes. And
Yeah.
there was a question came up, what do you want? Or something. I forget what the question was. But basically, he ends up kissing her. One thing leads to another. They go upstairs to a bedroom. And bedroom
Right.
scene.
Hold that thought. So before they do this, because I like how this merged together
I
with
know.
all of the
Great
stuff.
scene.
So yeah, it was kind of fun. So Edie accuses Mrs. Huber of stealing money, which I think she was doing. And I think this leads to something later on. I
It
can't
does.
remember. Because doesn't she put like money in her purse or something?
She puts money in her
Um,
purse. She takes money. She tells Edie, I didn't take money. I want the yogurts you ate on my fridge, the low-fat peach yogurts. I remember that.
yeah,
And when her and Edie, the argument's over, Edie threatens to leave and says, I'm moving out and get my own place. She even talks about Edie's debaucherous lifestyle. She questions her morals and ethics. Mrs. Huber is this good Christian woman, whatever. She's judgmental. She's a
yeah,
hypocrite.
good Christian woman who was blackmailing Susan earlier this season.
So she pulls the money out of her cleavage. Once Edie says, I'm moving out, she pulls money out of her cleavage, and it's the $40 that she stole from Edie. She shoves it inside her
Right.
purse.
So Paul is watching home videos and he's planning on having Edie killed. He basically wants to know why she did it. And Mr. Shaw, who is Richard Roundtree, says, "Don't get involved." He's like, you don't want to know. Just end it. Do whatever you got to do, whatever you want done, and that's that. Mr. Shaw meets with Edie, and she gives a paper to him, and she mentions that it was stolen, and he's like, "Stolen? What do you mean?" And then he finds out that it's Mrs. Huber's papers. So then he's like, "Okay, maybe Edie didn't." So they were about to just kill an innocent woman. She didn't do the murder or write the note, I mean. Um, but yeah, it's Mrs. Huber's papers, and then later on, Mr. Shaw meets up with Paul. Paul says to keep the money. Um, and he finds out that it's Mrs. Huber. He goes over to her house. Paul takes out the note and asks why. And she says, I was desperate for money. My husband left me poor, basically. Um, and that when she like alluded that Mary Alice was like a bad person,
She
for
yeah,
what she did to that girl.
she talks about when her husband died, he left her nothing. He left
Yeah,
her a worthless pension, and she had nothing. So she says, better to prey on a bad person than a good person. And then she said,
right.
my wife was good. She was, a good person. We were a good family. And said, oh, I know. Basically, she says, I know what you did. And she says that poor girl. And you don't know if it's a girl or an adult woman. You have
Yeah, you're not positive.
no.
Um, and yeah, she said what she did to that baby, I think she said. I thought she
Yeah,
said. Um, so meanwhile, your girl, he hits her with a pitcher with like what is it, like the blender pitcher?
the blender, which is the blender from it's a blender from Mary Alice's house in the beginning, the very first episode when she killed herself.
Yeah, because
She
she used to
labeled
take
everything she
everybody's shit.
borrowed.
Yeah. And he strangles her. And while your girl is having sex with Mike, they're showing like Mrs. Huber gets strangled, which I thought it was really interesting to show that. It's like, I don't know, it was fun. And he basically puts her in a carpet, and that's the end of that story. And then your girl finally got some from Mike,
She did. They had their
which
sort of
was,
happy ending, their happy moment.
and Paul had his happy moment. I mean, he wasn't planning on killing Mrs. Huber, really just wanted to know why, but when she was an asshole about it, she had to die. Moving on
So it's
to,
interesting. This
okay.
scene, though, this episode ends with that Bible again, and they show the picture of the
Oh,
Bible, and
right.
they say that everyone is a sinner, but not everyone feels guilt. So you have the idea of Andrew, Gabby, and now there is Paul, who has just murdered someone that caused his wife to kill herself. And
Yeah.
there's a whole idea of remorse and people that don't feel guilt at all. It's just an interesting. They
Hmm.
tie that whole episode together. Began with the Bible and guilt and all that crap, and sorry,
Right.
and they ended with the same thing. So
But basically, everybody's guilty in
yeah,
this episode of something. Episode 9 is Suspicious Minds. Starts out with my girl, Gabby. She's with Juanita. She's talking to this nurse, and I guess in her head, she's trying to think of something nice to do for somebody because this nurse like saved somebody's life and she got to witness it. So she decides to throw a fashion show with a charity, I guess, for nurses to raise money for nurses or whatever. Um, the ladies all talk about it. They're all shown. I guess everybody's getting involved with the fashion show. John volunteers at Gabby's fashion show. She brings up Danielle and that they may break up. Um, as they're talking, or no, yeah, he said that he broke up. I forget if he broke up with her at this point. Yeah, he did. He's like, oh, we broke up, whatever. And she puts her foot at his crotch. And who sees it?
so the interesting thing about this episode, Susan is sitting next to John's mother,
Mother.
and I forget what they're doing, but something falls on the ground. Susan leans underneath the table to pick it up. She looks across under the table, and she ends up seeing a female foot, and a male's crotch. And you see her eyes open really wide. She gets up to the table, and there's Gabby sitting across from John. Again, the young boy,
Hmm.
and Susan is sitting with John's mother. So
Yep.
again, I'll let you continue.
So John goes to Gabby. He dumped Danielle. So they weren't, I guess they were talking about just breaking up. Now he officially dumped her. And she's like, yeah, you got great timing because now she finds out, she tells him that Susan knows, nothing we can do. His mom's name is Helen, by the way, just so you know. John and his friend, played by Ryan Carnes from General Hospital, play basketball. His mom, Helen, overhears him saying that he's been doing a hot housewife. So she's like, oh shit. So John goes to Susan.
Oh, John goes to
Do you remember
Susan.
what happens with
John
that?
goes to Susan, and basically says, "I know you know." He says, I love her," and she said, "I don't think you do. You're just a young boy. Your entire life ahead of you. You know, you may be loved, but Carlos provides her with everything. Carlos provides her with money." And she says she questions it whether he's mature enough. Again, he says, "I love her," and this is where I think this is where does his mom end up hearing this scene?
You
His
know, Susan like touches his face,
and his
and
mother
just
ends
like
up
like a little boy, like you
yeah.
know, like
She
that type
tries
of
to console
thing.
him, sort
And
of. And I think this is where
Helen,
his mother sees it. And
yeah,
so
Helen
she
sees
overheard the
it
boys talking earlier, but this is she didn't know who it was. Now she
and
thinks
assumes
she
it's
assumes,
Susan.
oh my God, Susan is sleeping with my son. And you never poke
Never
Mama Bear.
assume.
Never poke Mama Bear.
So at the fashion show, Susan gets there. She's in her dress, whatever. Gabby tells her she looks fantastic. Susan blows her off. Gabby and Susan talk. Uh, Susan ends up telling her that she's weak and to come out about it. She wants her to tell his mom, at least, if anything. Gabby tells her, Gabby goes to Helen, tells her that it was her, and apologizes. We find out she started banging him when he was 16.
Yes. Because she said they
Not
were sleeping
good.
together for about a year, and you figure he's 17 and
Hmm.
a half, almost 17 and a half,
Yeah.
which means he was 16 years old. And in many states, in the US, 16 is the age of consent. So 16 or
Hmm.
younger, it's illegal. But again, it's still, even 18 is too young. It's just basically the mama bear is pissed. And she says, I'm glad this is over. And she goes, it's not over. So,
Yeah. No, what Gabby was saying, like, it's over, it's over, it's over. And then the mother, Helen, says, no, it's not over. So, you know, Helen's going to be doing some shit, we think. Um, so Gabby is nervous about what Helen might say to Carlos. Um, but she doesn't say anything to Carlos. The cops show up and she thinks she's basically turned in. But they come and arrest Carlos. And he says something like Tanaka set him up. And that's all I got for that, because your girl comes into play at the very end.
okay. So
So I guess do Susan's, whatever's left.
it's Bree, basically, Bree and Rex.
Yeah.
Uh, so Bree and Rex, basically, they're questioning about the whole thing of Andrew's morality, and they're questioning that he has no remorse. And Bree's upset that he has no remorse. Rex is like, let it be. She says, I think he should leave the swim team. He doesn't leave the swim team. But in a previous episode, I started to say that, and I stopped. Bree catches Andrew smoking pot, and she basically, at some point, she confronts him on it. She makes him take a urine test, and she goes and argues with Rex. They're arguing on the golf course, and she throws the urine at Rex at the very end. So she basically wants him to go get it tested, and she throws it at him. And basically, he said something to her, and she said, "This is how you make me feel." Basically, someone's like saying, "You make me feel like shit," but it's you pissed all over my life,
Yeah, right.
So Bree and Lynette. There's another scene we completely forgot about this. Bree and Lynette. Bree and Lynette are seeing. They're talking about I think it was. Oh no, maybe I won't allude to that yet. We'll go to Bree and Andrew. I'll let you do the Bree and Lynette scene. Bree and Andrew
Sure.
are talking about everything about the pot. He's smiling, the urine test. They basically want him kicked off the swim team. Bree and Rex are arguing about it. Whatever. Doesn't really happen. Um, Finally, like I said, Bree confronts Rex, throws the urine at him. Later on, Bree. Let me see. Bree is called from school, and she's trying to figure out what to do with Andrew still. She asked Danielle where Andrew hides his pot, and his pot isn't hidden at home. It's hidden at school in his locker, his swim locker, basically inside the pool hall at the
Yeah.
school. So she goes to remove the pot, thinks I'll take it away from him, and then she goes, you know what? I'm actually going to plant it. So she moves it from where he has it in the locker and puts it inside his socks in the front. So you fast forward
Yeah.
to a scene of Bree gets a call from school. She's arranging flowers. Everything again is perfect in Bree's world. She's arranging flowers. She gets the call. Oh no, there must be some mistake. Not my son, because they find marijuana in his locker. Bree is so calm on the phone, and any parent would not react that calmly. So you know Bree had something to do with it, and we watched her plan it. They end up suspending Andrew from the team. I think that's pretty much it with Bree's story.
Yeah. And then I got Lynette. So Tom and Lynette discuss hiring a nanny. Basically, she'll lose her mind if she doesn't get a hold of one. Bree and Lynette talk about the nanny. She's like, "Can you get one of your friends? Like, how can I poach one of your friends' nannies?" I guess she has like high class friends. I don't know. I always figured those four were friends. Do they need any more?
Yeah, right.
Whatever. So she wants a high grade nanny for her kids. I'm like, I don't feel like a high grade nanny would ever help her children. They're pretty bad. Um, Lynette goes to a park full of nannies. She meets Claire and she kind of starts grooming her just to like get to know her a little bit. And she sees that she was really good with the kids that she's watching already. We have Alexis, the crazy mother, comes along. She's very controlling or whatever, and she seems okay with Claire in that scene. She looked all mad, but then when she got to her, she was like nice. I just made a side note that Tom was hosting the fashion show. That's all he does in this, basically. After that beginning scene, Lynette goes to Claire and offers her a great deal, and she takes it, basically. That's all Lynette does. Very side story in this one. I feel like Bree was kind of side story in this too, because it was
She
all
was
about
too.
Susan and Gabby, really.
What's good is they sort of
Um,
focus on certain characters on certain episodes. Some
yeah,
episodes you barely see a character; they're in there for maybe like
right.
5 minutes at most. Um, but I'll tell you on the
No,
side note, you talked about Tom hosting the fashion show is because Carlos got called late to work, which ties in with his story getting arrested. I think
yeah,
this is where something's going wrong in his work. They really don't say what it is. And that end scene that you talked about with Gabby and Carlos, he has boxes of paperwork and he seems frustrated. He's going through and sort of crunching numbers. And he basically gets set up by, I guess, a partner in his business or someone in his business. But that's what he
right.
was doing. That's why he didn't make the fashion show, just to go back to that.
And then in the end, that's when Susan actually kind of was there for Gabby. You actually see a bit of remorse from Gabby because she's actually upset that Carlos did get arrested.
Yeah.
And that's like the first time I feel like Gabby breaks in 9 episodes. Like you actually
Oh, yeah.
see there's a little bit more to her than just what the shit she's been doing these past
Yeah.
9 episodes.
You feel bad for her at some point because, again, she is human. Why she seems so selfish, her entire world is collapsing, you know?
And then how about Helen confronting Susan?
Oh. So,
Cat
Susan,
fight.
I know, right? So, we talked about Susan with John, that whole scene about the foot scene and everything. Susan, where else was Susan? Susan talked about, later John confronts Susan and says that he loves Gabby, all that stuff. They fast forward to
Right.
the fashion event. No, there's a few more things. Um, Susan and Gabby, basically Susan wants Gabby to tell her. She's like, I can't tell her mother. I can't stop this, whatever. They also show a scene with Zach and Julie. So you find out in this scene, I think Zach and Julie are writing each other, but Zach had escaped the mental institution. The doctor showed up, I forget if it's this episode or last episode, but said that your son escaped. And he talked about how he's off his medication and he's not stable. So you fast forward to a
Yeah.
scene of Zach and Julie. Julie's giving Zach all of her money. It's basically like allowance, coins, whatever, dollars. And he talks
Right.
about his life is all messed up. She says, tell me. He says, it's better you don't know. And then he does tell her. He just says he has these memories about his mom and his dad. So Paul and Mary Alice fighting. And he remembers them standing over her bloody body. And this is where he mentions Dana. And he says, I think I killed her.
Yeah.
And um, Julie leans in and hugs Zach. Like she feels so bad for him, thinking, oh my God, you were a kid. You had no control over this. You're just a toddler. And she pulls back, and then Zach kisses her. So you're like, what the heck's going on? We know at this point that Zach is unstable. Julie doesn't know. No one else knows.
Right.
So,
And Julie likes Zach, so I think she actually does kiss back.
yeah. So, where else is Susan? Paul
Susan with
approaches
Helen.
Susan. What's up?
So Susan was about to go out of the fashion show, and Helen shows up to confront her.
Oh, yeah. So, Susan has this dress, looks stunning at some point. So, we'll go back to the dress. The dress almost,
White
it's
dress,
white,
long.
florally. It's kind of like wedding dress, but not wedding dress, but it looks stunning. Edie tries to steal the dress from Susan, and Susan's like, no, that's my dress.
Yeah.
Helen at some point backs out of the fashion show, and we know why, because Helen is upset with, I guess, the whole thing about her son. She doesn't know it's
Right.
Gabby, but she backs out. So Helen was supposed to go on last. They said, no, we have to put Susan last. And the girls say, let's put Susan last. This is a showstopper dress. And everyone goes on. You see all the girls. They all look stunning in the fashion show. And Paul really did compliment, not Paul, Tom complimented Lynette. I
Right.
love that he sort of really complimented his wife during the fashion show.
Hmm.
Susan's getting ready to go out, and she sees Helen. And this is where Helen confronts her. John's mother confronts her. And it starts into a slap. She pulls at her. It's a tug of war. She slaps her. Her hair ends up all messy. Susan looks stunning, and the hair is a mess. And then she pulls Susan's dress. And then all of a sudden, they call for Susan to come out. Susan starts to walk out. Her hair is a mess, disheveled. The dress is torn. A heel is broken, and she's stumbling out. And she looks like she's been through the ringer. And again, this sums up how Susan is. Her life is, it's always a fumble. It's just, she fumbles along. She looks beautiful at
Yeah.
times, and then she looks like a hot mess.
And her dress is like almost above her crotch because she's like holding her
It is.
hand, like trying to pull the
She's trying to pull it down because she doesn't want to show anything. But
She
again, we
ripped
went
the
from this
dress out.
stunning model-esque, almost bride-like dress to it
Right.
looks like she was through the ringer. It looks like she survived a tragedy. Um,
Yeah.
and they end the scene with Susan, like you said, consoling Gabby. She almost sort of,
Yeah.
they don't really talk a lot, but she sort of hugs Gabby, and I guess she's there for her, realizing like, hey, you've been through some things. Um,
Right.
I
We may not
think
always
that's pretty much it
agree,
for this.
but yeah, there's a little bit more. So, like in the beginning, the girls are talking about why Mrs. Huber's not there. So we have like Mrs. Huber's dress, which like this black number. Um, and we see that Paul's burying her with the blender.
Yes.
Um, so that's nice because she stole that blender pretty much. Um, Paul is trying to get like the blood out of his stuff, and that's when the doctor comes by and says Zach's missing. We find out that Julie is hiding Zach, and you had already said a bunch of stuff. And later on, Paul questions Julie. Um, and the FBI and the cops are around, and they see that they say that there was an adult female in the chest that they found in the water, the lake or whatever it is, that was chopped up. And I think that's all we have.
I think they also, you see them in an earlier scene. The FBI approach a man making cabinets. He builds cabinets basically in chests and furniture. He's a woodworker, and they
Oh
interrupt
yeah,
him.
that guy that they were
And they,
questioning.
yeah, and they ask him about this chest. He says that he shows that the FBI showed the chest to this guy. He says, I made probably hundreds of these. They said, well, do you have any records? He said, oh, I keep extensive records. It's going to take me a little while to find them, but I know every customer I sold them to. And so with each chest is also a name. Remember, on the chest, there's a name Dana on it. So he said this
Yeah.
chest looks like it's been through hell, and that's where they say it was at the bottom of the lake. And later on, they talk about the body inside. And he goes, they said it was an adult woman was found inside. He said there's no way an adult could fit in there. And they said the body was dismembered.
Hmm. Yeah.
And they actually show the body. They show the skeleton later on, like in all the
So
pieces.
yeah, so that's what I was confused about. I'm like, so we have a Dana that was a possible baby, and then we have this adult female. So we really don't know what's going on with this
Yeah.
stuff. Um, but I guess we'll find out maybe at some point. But that's all I have for these.
Yeah, that's all I
Anything else
have for
to
this
say?
too. I did like how the girls sort of came together here. There was an idea of
Hmm.
forgiveness. There's a whole idea with Lynette at the soccer field, and they all talk to each other. They're being very
Yeah.
supportive now, which neighbors nowadays, they talk about how you know your neighbors, but you really don't know them. And now that
Right.
they're sort of reconnecting the neighbors, they're being there for each other. And that's what they had before Mary Alice killed herself. And that's what they're finding and discovering again. They're sort of this sense of community and like a family they
Well,
have.
it's almost like once Mary Alice killed herself,
Mm.
the secret started coming out from
Yeah.
all the other housewives. Um, it seems because I feel like because like we said, Bree was holding things together. I don't know. I feel like Susan's stuff was pretty much all out there. She's probably the only one that doesn't have secrets. Gabby,
Yeah.
of course, sleeping with John. Lynette, I guess she really didn't have too much. Just I guess just the stresses and competing with everybody and that type of thing. Um, and I guess feeling that way, which led to her addiction.
Yeah.
Um,
And I really
so yeah,
felt for
it's
Lynette with
interesting.
that. Like I really
Yeah, I
felt for
know.
Lynette, all the problems she went through. And again, we hear this from all the girls at work. We don't have kids, Eric and I. We have our pets. Our pets are our kids. But we hear them talk about all these stories, and I'm like, oh my God, these poor girls are struggling. And we hear all the girls talk, and sometimes they don't talk to each other. And we're like, hey, talk to the other girls in the office. They have the same problems going on. You're not alone.
Yeah,
There's other people suffering through this just like you. And
yeah,
sometimes we have to say you're a great parent. And it's a shame
yeah,
that more don't talk like these girls finally do in this episode.
yeah,
Because then there would be that camaraderie, this, hey, it's okay. I've been there. Try this. It's okay to feel that way. I felt that way too. And I don't know. I sort of wish that happened more in life. I wish
yeah.
people were kind of like that.
It's fun to see these stories unravel.
It is. And there's so much I forgot about the stories. And
Yeah,
again, I
same.
forget the timeline of the story. So it's fun to discover it again because we sort
And
of remember
again,
what happens in the end, but we don't know how we get there.
and it's also different when you're like podcasting about it because you like feel like you pay more attention.
Oh,
Where,
yeah.
when you're first kind of watching it, you run and grab a snack, like stuff like that randomly,
Yeah.
so you kind of don't see things. And so it's fun to dissect them a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, we'll wrap this up. Thank you to our Patreon members. We wouldn't be here without you. You're exclusively on Patreon, so yay. Thank you very much. Subscribe, like, and comment. Subscribe to our free side. Tell your friends, family, anybody who will listen to us. And have a good day, everyone.
Bye.
Till next time. Bye.